Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to Molten Music Technology. Today is all about Mantis. Mantis is an intriguing synthesizer. It's an unusual synthesizer. It's a surprising synthesizer. It keeps giving me things that I don't necessarily expect. It has a familiarity to it, and yet it's forever sort of poking you around in slightly different directions. It has digital oscillators which offer an interesting kind of grasp of analog, while at the same time cracking up around the edges and giving you a sort of a digital blowback at the same time. And this sort of means that you have shaping, you have wavetables, you kind of have super saws, you have sort of virtual analog bits and pieces in there which you would expect from a big virtual analog synthesizer, but this is built into very much an analog style of routing and facility that keeps it forever sort of grounded in this grit and this dirt that's never quite going to pull itself out of that. It's never going to quite be sort of pristine or gentle. Well, I mean, I don't know. I've pulled some really nice, evolving sort of sounds out of it, while at the same time it really does enjoy its ability to dance between these two filters that it has. And so kind of the experience you get of playing with Mantis is one that encourages you to just adventure around the edges of things a little bit more, to keep trying and to keep evolving and to keep thinking, oh, well, actually, no, maybe I could do this. And what that does, I think, is it brings you into a very creative, a very interesting and unexpected space. And that's got to be good. Because otherwise all synths are the same. And this is definitely throwing itself up against that. A bit. Now, Mantis is essentially a direct descendant from the Wasp and the Oscar, two synths made by Chris Huggett, whom also had a great deal of input into this. However, sadly, Chris is no longer with us, but PWM took his designs and his ideas and pushed them all the way through to completion, and this is what we have. PWM, who you may know, also created the Malevolent with Future Sound Systems, and this is their second synthesizer. It's a bigger idea. It has both more sort of history to it and classic ideas to it, as well as offering more down the line of actually creating sounds and environments. PWM have also now very recently acquired the Oscar brand. So I imagine we're going to see more ideas and evolutions of the Oscar and Chris Nugget's work going forward, which is quite exciting. It's a great legacy, I think, to have. There's something about the Wasp which is uniquely, as you can imagine, in the very name, it's uniquely fizzy and buzzy and awesome. I mean, if you like, it's classically British, which is what we are. We're a bit fizzy, but somewhere in there we're awesome, although we'd never talk about it particularly. And then you have the Oscar, which was bizarre and interesting because of its filter and its voicing arrangement, but also because of its look. Now, right up front, I just want to get out there, I don't like the look of the Mantis. I'm really sorry. The Malevolent, I tried really hard to love it in terms of its look, but I just enjoyed the sound and enjoyed playing with it. The Mantis is similar. This green, man, what is it with this green? I mean, I respect the choice of colour. It's just it doesn't really completely gel with me. The layout of this, the knobs and everything else, it's very uniform. It's very together, and that's great and will appeal to lots of people. But what I loved about the Oscar was this meandering route of weirdness, blocks of wood and strangeness. It just had this aesthetic character which the Mantis lacks. However, it does have a look, and that's something. It will stand out, no doubt, in your rack of synthesizers. I can put that to one side now. I've said my piece on that. But otherwise, what we have is a really interesting synthesizer. But what is it that makes it interesting? People say that, oh, it's a really fascinating synthesizer, but what is it exactly? Well, that's what I'm going to try and show you. There's been plenty of videos out about the Mantis already, which will take you through all the bits and pieces. I will do a little bit of that, but mostly I just want to focus on the things that I feel make this really, really different and have filled me with absolute joy as I've played with it over the last few days, getting down into it, creating presets, all that kind of stuff. It's been intriguing. It's been, oh yeah, that's going, oh yeah. Trying to hear these things, trying to tell the differences, trying to enjoy the way the voices spread, the way those filters sort of play with each other. Do I like that? Do I not like that? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. It just adds variation and difference, which is something I'm always looking for in a synthesizer. So, I mean, another important thing to stress is that with the latest firmware update, it now has proper polyphony, proper 4-voice polyphony. Up until this point, it kind of was, I mean, it was monophonic and then duophonic. It was designed to be duophonic, so 2 notes at once, and you could use the 2 filters inside in order to achieve that. Now, somehow, through some jiggery-pokery, they then moved it up to be a quad voice, so 4-voice, but paraphernalia. I don't know, 4 voices going through the same filter architecture. So you had this sort of ham-fisted 4 notes going on. But now, with the latest update, it's now proper 4 voice. So for each voice, you get the same arrangement of filters or something. All that really means is that it's now starting to sound like a proper synthesizer. As in, it doesn't feel compromised in any way. I think duophonic, you tend to go, oh yeah, I can hit 2 notes. I mean, great. I don't know that I will, to be honest. I'll probably just carry on playing 1 note at a time. But once you hit 4 voices and you can play them properly in a kind of a chord kind of way, then it starts to feel like something completely different. You're no longer having to just depend on your bass lines and your ripping leads and those kinds of, funky, acidy sounds. No, you can now start pulling out environments and soundscapes and wobbly different ventures off into other bits of space. And it gives itself an entire different role to play within your musical palette. So what should we do then? I know, let's bring you in nice and close. We'll look at some things, I'll explain a couple of things, and then we'll just play with the bits that I think really make this interesting. Yeah? All right. So the Mantis then, it says here, look, Mantis hybrid analog synthesizer, it says, digital and analog working together, perfect Manterian harmony or something. This is the oscillator section here. You've kind of got 4 oscillators. You've got oscillator 1, oscillator 2, which has a companion oscillator, and then a sub-oscillator. So I think what we should do is initiate a patch, because the oscillators are interesting. Before we have a look at the filters and the voices and other bits and pieces, let's just get these waveforms a-wobbling and see what we can work out. So to initialize a patch is very easy. There's a button down here. This one, can you see that? This one here that says init button, bump. And there you go, just got a basic waveform. Let's get back up to what we're looking at. Should also be able to see on my wonderful scope over here, there you go, that it is a sawtooth. So that's its starting point, it's a sawtooth. But let's have a look at oscillator 1, which is what we can hear. And it has a sine wave of sorts, a triangle. It's just... Alright, so we're hitting to one quirk already, which is that the shaping knob here, which is fantastic, it shapes the waveform, it does different things depending on which waveform that you're on. So to swap between a pure sine wave, I've got to find that first. That's sort of in the middle. There's your sine wave. When I go to triangle, that's a little bit shaped. So to find the triangle, I've got to go all the way to the left, and there's the triangle. It's not without its quirks. In fact, I would say that quirkiness is kind of part of its remit, part of its idea, part of its character, heart, brain, soul, everything else that you associate with the inner workings of a synthesizer. It is quirked, all of it, all over the place. From the look of it is a quirk. The way it functions is a quirk. The voicing and the filters, it's all quirkiness, right? So if you're into something really straight, if you want straight, normal, boring, Moog-like, for instance, this is probably not for you. This is for the weirdos and the wanderers and those who just like to be surprised. Anyway, so triangle. Next up, we've got our sawtooth, we spoke about a moment ago. Then square wave, but of course it's not there because I've already turned the shape, so the pulse width has already killed it. So there's our square. Then we have this interesting kind of organ mode, which is a bunch of sine waves together, I guess. Which is, you'll discover that's really quite interesting. And then wavetable. Very, very simple. Now, as I say, all of these have shaping. So if I go back to my sine wave, it's really, really nice. Triangle. Really kind of subtle. Sawtooth is really nice because when you start getting that moving, when you add some modulation to it, it's just nice. And this is on the first oscillator. We're not got into the beating of oscillators and that kind of detuning yet, and it's already throwing itself into being something nice. Square wave, yeah, you know, we know that. Pulse width modulation, la-di-da, we know all about that. On the organ side, it throws in some additional harmonics. See, that's lovely. That's a lovely thing to have. If I turn on a few more voices. Lovely. And then the wavetable, of course, takes you through what is a relatively basic and recognizable, I suppose, bunch of wavetable sounds. it does move between them. It's not leaping or anything. It's a nice blend. And that is oscillator 1. That's what you have. You can octave it up and down. Another little quirk there for you. Everything's a bit laggy. So, you know, I change the octave. It goes, oh, I'm changing octave. And then does it. So, you know, as I say, quirks, right? Quirks. Let's go back to a single sound. So oscillator 2, you can access that by itself. It has all these bits and pieces here. So we have a mix between oscillator 1 and oscillator 2 here on this knob. So I can put it all the way over onto oscillator 1, which is what we've got at the moment, or oscillator 2. Now oscillator 2 has all the same bits. It's got your sines, your triangles, your sawtooth, your square, your organ, and your wavetable. So 2 identical oscillators in that case. However, this has extra shenanigans going on. It has this density section down here. Now density is essentially, it's a kind of a super saw idea where it's adding an extra oscillator which then modulates and beats and that sort of thing with it. Well, I mean, at least I think so. That seems to be what happens. So let's go on to our, what should we call it? Sawtooth. And then put in the density. And you can hear that detuning of multiple oscillators going on. I can increase the rate of that. And that's lovely. And that's just oscillator 2 by itself. I mean, you can achieve the same thing by having both oscillators 1 and 2 on the same thing. And then detuning slightly. So what I've done, I've got oscillator 1 and 2 running, and I've just detuned it a little bit on this knob here, and you get the same effect as having number 2 by itself with the density up. But you've kind of got that built in. That's kind of what's interesting. So you've got oscillator 2 doing that. I can bring oscillator 1 back in. You've got a semitone tuning as well as the detuning knob here. And just through using the oscillators, you've got this very gooey sound going on. Then you have a sub-oscillator, which I think is a bit of a thumping sine wave. It quite easily overwhelms, but just bringing that in gives you this sense of gravitas. So that basic oscillator-driven sound is a really great synthesizer sound. I haven't done any filtering or modulation. Now down here is an oscillator drift knob. That's very cool because of these, you could say, slightly too clean digital oscillators. Adding in a bit of oscillator drift folds in a kind of a sample and hold change to the pitch of each oscillator. So it's moving. If I take us down just to oscillator 1, you can hear that a little bit cleaner. Because I had everything else also detuning and modulating and pulsing and beating against each other, you don't hear it quite so much. But individually, that is really nice. absolutely gives it a kind of a crappy, semi-broken vintage feel. So when you bring all of that together, I mean, I'm just focusing on the saws because I really like Sawtooth, but together with the drift, the sub, the density, the slight detuning, oh, it's just brilliant. That's so nice. If I put it into quad mode, it's so synthy. It sounds like a synthesizer. I'm always playing far too many notes. I do apologise for that. Let's dial in something slightly different. And as you pull the oscillator drift out, it starts to just refocus again. Beautiful. So that's the oscillator section. Essentially, you can do so much with that because you've also got shape modulation and you've got pitch modulation, which, well, again, before we go to the filter, let's have a look at the modulation section, which is down here. And then we'll come to the filter. Everybody likes to jump to the filter first. No, we're going to go with this bit here because it's worth talking about and it's perhaps easier to hear when we're just talking about oscillators. So the modulation section is relatively simple. You've got 6 sources and 6 destinations. That's about it. It could do with more, to be fair. I would like to be able to modulate things like the voice spread and the mix between oscillators, the noise balance, things like that. I would also like to modulate, which we can't. We have 6. I mean, there's 6 good ones, but there are only 6. The idea is that you select your source, the modulator you want to use, stuff it into the thing you want to modulate, but you've also got this little section over here called scale, and this allows us to set what enables the modulation. That all makes sense in a minute, but let's keep it simple, just with source and control for the moment. So we've got our single oscillator. I'm going to change the oscillator 1 shape. And I'm going to do that with my choice of source, LFO2. LFO2 is here. So it's flashing away at its rate currently. It has various shapes you can use. Let's just use a good old-fashioned sine wave. In order to allocate it, well, I've allocated it, but now I need to turn up the amount. And it has an individual knob for that. You've got shape modulation and also pitch modulation. So shape is what I want. It's bipolar, that's the word I'm after. So you can go in either direction. Very simple. I can do the pitch, make that LFO1, and similarly increase the pitch. In order to add a bit of vibrato. What's quite nice is that both LFOs have fade ins and fades outs, so I can fade that in so it comes in after a little bit. Or you can have it fade out, which is also quite nice. So the modulation is there from the beginning. No, it's not there at all. Let's try that again. There we go. It's there and then it goes away. Now, when we talked about the scale, scaling it in, you can use various things to do that. For instance, a really good one is aftertouch. So the keyboard is aftertouchable. So the LFO will only come in when I push in or lean in to the aftertouch. It's not a polyphonic aftertouch. So that's the idea with the scaling. You could make it the joystick. Oh, I've got to take it off pitch mode at the same time. Or you can make it velocity. So it depends how hard I hit it. But aftertouch is a really nice way of leaning in to some modulation. If you don't want it, just put it on full on, and then you're left with what it is that you were playing with. There are different sorts of waveforms. Now, while all the controls can only be modulated by one modulator, I can stick the modulators into all of the controls. So I've got oscillator 2 shape here. I'm going to put LF2 into that, the same. So you can very quickly add the modulation to where you want to go, but you are restricted to these these 6. So you've got shape and pitch and then filter. That is it. It really needs more, I have to say. It does feel a little bit light in terms of what it is that you can actually modulate. However, you can do a lot with it. You can. So at this point, I think we should probably pop on over to the filter. Now, the filter has a couple of different modes, lots of different modes. You've got 12 dB, low pass, band pass, high pass, then 24 dB, low pass, band pass, and high pass. The 12 dB ones are duophonic, which means that you can have 2 filters going at the same time, which kind of all gets a bit interesting. I'm not going to go into any depth on what is happening or what's going on, but I guess famously, if you go to the first preset, it gives you that sort of sound. Because you have these 2 peaks involved, which gives a very vormenty sound to the filters. So with our 12 dB low pass filter, which is kind of where I live really, you have cut off and you have resonance. And it's nice. You have this width knob here which pushes those filters apart. Definitely gives you something weird and fascinating. Let's set it up in motion, just to play with that filter a little bit. If I just go through the different modes, there's a band pass mode. High pass. And then the 24 dB ones are not so polyphonic. Then you have wideband. And wide notch. We've also got drive, which drives directly into the filters. sub a little bit. We also have a noise generator. And then finally for the filter you've got an envelope, of course. So I can go to the control panel, select filter cutoff, and that's set automatically to envelope 2, which is this one here. So you set the amount there. Now that is everything you want in a synthesizer. I think you have a gooey, animated sound that's moving and throbbing against itself, that's finding tones, that's eating into that filter, that's driving into that filter. Good. Now let's have a quick look at the voicing possibilities. So we've been running it sort of monophonically. We can put it in duophonic mode. The level drops a little bit because it has to cope with these more voices potentially. But then what you get is this ability to spread the voices. So if you're listening to this in stereo, you should start to hear strange things going on. You can also see it in our scope here. Now if I take off the ARP, you should hear those each voice spreading itself around in stereo. It's really lovely. Now we can start bringing the other envelope, the amplitude envelope in. Oh, one good thing to point out at this point is the sustain fall, which is a new one on me. Sustain fall, not come across that before. That's this knob here. And essentially what that does is makes the sustain fade out. So you have this, it's like, so you have your attack going up and then your decay coming down to the sustain level, and then you've got your sustain just starts to fade away rather than waiting for release, which is quite cool. I wonder whether I can do anything which will make that appear to know what I'm doing. Alright, so for the filter, you can hear the filter go away when I release, right? So if I turn up the sustain fall, it should fall away as I'm still holding the note. Yeah, no, that wasn't really what I was after. Let's go with that. Maybe I need it down here somewhere. So it falls away, very much like, I guess, a longer decay. Yeah, I think you get it. I think I get it, kinda, but it's interesting anyway. Now when you push it into quad mode, again you get a little drop, because it's now trying to cope with 4 voices. Okay, it's just to show the 4 notes of full polyphony going through the filter. You can hear the filter. On each note, right? Okay, I'm loving that sound. That's a lovely sound. Enjoying that. Now, what else you have at the end here is some reverb and chorus. It's not the most awesome of reverbs, but it's alright. The chorus is really quite nice. But as many people have commented already, I think, a delay would have probably been slightly more interesting. But the chorus does certainly add to the gooiness of the whole experience. You do have a slight problem when you're in quad mode where the voices just get a little bit too much. And there is a fix for that. Under the oscillator 1-2 balance, if you hold shift, which is over here, you can adjust the overall output of those oscillators going into the filter, which just brings them a little bit more under control again. Because it does have a tendency to distort when there's that many voices going on. As you can hear. Right, another thing to show you is the RingMod, I suppose. So let's bring in our two oscillators, stick them onto sine waves, and then you have ring modulation. What does that mean? Nobody knows. It's one of those mysterious terms used in synthesis to make us feel clever. It's nothing to do with telephones. So to make anything useful happen from it, I need to move the semitone of the oscillator in order to pump one oscillator into another. It's essentially some kind of sort of frequency modulation to some degree. I guess I could put an LFO into pitch mod. Ring modulation, my favourite thing of all time. Right, I've created a bunch of patches. I'm just going to take you through those quickly by way of demonstration. These patches I will capture into its own individual virtual instrument, which will be available free to all patrons. Good old patrons, you're awesome. Or you can pick it up at my Patreon page if you just want to buy the instrument itself. So there you have it, Mantis. Thank you, Cockerel. He agrees. It's a quirky, interesting synthesizer, and I have to say, the more that I play with it, the more I don't mind the look of it. If you know what I mean. I mean, it could be orange, couldn't it, or something? I don't know. Maybe they should do it in a range of different colours. That would be interesting. The aesthetic and how I feel about the interface. As I say, the more I use it, the more I gel into it. It is a little bit ordered. All the knobs are the same. They're not fantastic knobs. They're all right. Everything is relatively solid and feels okay. I find they're a little bit fiddly. My fingers tend to slip a little bit on some of these switchable type knobs in order to find the right thing that I'm after. So, generally speaking, the interaction with the front panel is all right. It's all right. I'm not having a wonderful time with nice big filter knobs, or not being invited in to explore my way through things, because everything is ordered and very much in its place. And that's all right. That suits an ordered mind. I think. I just feel that perhaps, particularly with the Oscar and the Wasp in there somewhere, that it could have burst out into something slightly more esoteric, something slightly weirder could have happened at the front end of things. But heck, all the weirdness, I guess, is baked into the architecture and the modulation options and the shaping and the width and the spread. Those sorts of, that's where that sort of stuff resides, I guess, and that's the most important place ultimately. So yeah, good, that's all right. Overall, the sound for my ears is enormously pleasing, and you have places to go. I mean, that's the thing. It's not just the filter, because it's the filter width. It's those two peaks that you can play with. It's the voice spread that you can play with. The fact that you've got different sorts of detuning going on. You've got oscillator 2 doing its own thing, wobbling about. Then you've got oscillator 1 that can wobble with it. And that is really nice. When you're going into your juiciness of your saws and other waveforms that are just out of kilter with each other, there's a lot of room for getting just a really good, enjoyable, heart-wrapping sound, I think. Drift is nice, the sub is nice. You have this ability to build and build as you're kind of crafting a sound that you're after. The sort of minimalistic modulation possibilities do tend to drag you into a similar direction. So you've got a sound, and then you make it wobble, and then you make it wobble some more. It could do with a little bit more direction in that, but then, the limitations push and rub up against our creativity and allow us to perhaps look into things that we didn't look before, and perhaps we need to work a little bit harder, and that's no bad thing. I mean, from the LFO point of view, you do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 waveforms, which is very cool. This fade in, fade out business is nice. I like that. The ability to scale stuff as you play, via velocity or with a joystick command, or with a joystick twaggle, or with aftertouch. Those are really nice performative ways to create interest into what you're doing and what you're playing. So there's a lot of scope there for creating an animated and a live sound while you're performing, while you're playing with it. Keyboard is nice. Yeah, it's good. It's solid. I like it. No complaints there. The joystick thing is cool. I enjoy a good joystick rather than necessarily a modern pitch wheel. I think that works all right. The arpeggiator, is super duper. That's all doing its thing. So it's really hard to find a complaint when it comes to the synthesis and how it's working. Really, the complaints come down to, I want more. I want more modulation. I want more interesting knobs. I want more effects, as opposed to there being something fundamentally wrong in here. The quirkiness of it is all right, completely manageable. The fact that it overwhelms itself sometimes, you have the ability to turn down the oscillators going into the filter, and so that helps ultimately with that. Even if it seems a little bit kind of, I shouldn't be doing that to start with. But I guess you have to realise that it didn't start off as a 4-voice polyphonic synthesizer. It started off as something slightly more restrained, and so things like the levels of those voices all coming together is something that needs to be baked in kind of at the beginning, and so the fact that you're wrestling with that a little bit is in some ways to be expected. I like the fact how everything pretty much is out on the panel. There is a shift button and a couple of extra facilities like adjusting the level of the oscillators. You can also adjust the density of the noise generator, which is quite nice because it allows you to add sort of this wayward grit into the sounds more than an overwhelming noise. I mean, I'm not a particular fan of noise generators unless I'm trying to be the C. So it actually makes it slightly more usable because you can reduce it down so it's just a flutter in the background rather than a little bit overwhelming. The ring modulation, it's nice to have. It's not my scene, man. I don't ever really know what I'm supposed to be doing with it. But it's certainly there and gives you this simple enough way of balancing between oscillators, balancing between noise and oscillators, balancing between ring modulation and oscillators. It all works fine. The ability to save patches is very cool, but of course it instantly renders the front panel complete nonsense whenever you select one, because nothing is no longer looking at what it should do. Everything kind of jumps to the next parameter, so when you grab the filter, it will jump to whatever you start moving it to, as opposed to picking up, which might have been slightly better, I think, so that when you grab the filter, rather than it suddenly wanging itself over to where that is, it only starts to move once you've gone through the value that it's already set to, if that makes sense. That's something I think which is very useful when you're dealing with a synthesizer that is never showing you what it actually is. And there's no like panel or LED which is going to tell you how far away you are from its actual value. And those are some things that I like to see in these sorts of synthesizers, but hey, we don't have it. So in summary then, it's a cool and interesting synthesizer. It has some quirks and uniqueness to it, which makes it more interesting than anything else you have knocking around at the time. It has these 4 voices which you can play with, which turns it into something approximating a proper polyphonic synthesizer. You can pull out pads, you can pull out meandering chords and other bits and pieces, and it sounds right. But it also sounds off, and that's part of its charm, part of its character. The oscillator drift, the beating between things, the wobble, the modulation, which is going into all these different sorts of areas, the shaping, the width, the voice spread, all of these things really build it into this interesting sound. Which is, it's different, and it takes you to a different place and allows you to come up with sounds which are less common, less obvious, and that's surely a good thing to have in your palette of sounds. So cool, yeah, I like it. I mean, now that PWM have the Oscar brand, it'll be interesting to see what they come up with next. What I would encourage them to do, though, is write a bloody manual. Go on. Write a manual, just so that we absolutely know what everything is doing, because you're kind of left a little bit in the dark. You just have to fiddle around and try and work it out for yourself. I mean, that's a good learning experience, but, put some time in, write a manual. That will help us out, I think. So there you go, the Mantis. I hope that was useful. In the meantime, go and make some tunes.